Greetings and salutations. My name is Michael Schwahn, and this is your one-take review of NeuroNet Mendax Proxy. Couple quick disclaimers. First off is that I did receive a copy of the game for free from the developers, but when I received that, they were like, hey, thank you so much for doing the reaction video to the release of the game. We just wanted to give you a key. There was no expectation set. There was no exchange of anything else. It just so happened that when they sent me the key, I was actively looking for a game to play on stream, and I had a slight interest in the game, and I was like, yeah, sure. So we played it and ended up enjoying it quite a bit, and let's talk about the reasons why, okay? So first, what is it? NeuroNet Mendax Proxy is, at its core, a visual novel. Now, you will see some descriptions in there as like a city management game, and that's kind of true, but it's about as much of a city management game as Steins Gate is a puzzle game, okay? They are both just visual novels, and there's a little bit more that we can talk about what they mean with city management when we get to the gameplay, but it's a visual novel, okay? And in this game, you play as an artificial intelligence. Your name is Ark, and you were developed as a citywide service, okay? An interactive AI for the citizens. So you are plugged in to the NeuroNet, which is all around the city. There's tons of terminals that they can interface with you to ask for your assistance. Whether it's help, guidance, you know, I need you to do this thing, I need to know where I need to go. Think of it kind of like the ultimate evolution of your phone's automated assistant, but on a citywide scale and is actually useful rather than just never understanding what you're saying. And you can make your own decisions too, because you do have your own freedom in the responses that you give, and you can choose to help or hinder these individuals as you see fit. And you will probably find some individuals that you want to help and others that you just don't because of your own personal biases as a human, but we'll talk more about that when we get into the story. What does it look like and what does it sound like? So it's a visual novel. If you're looking at this instead of me, I totally understand, but this is not going to get much more interesting than what's been on the screen at this point in time, okay? You're going to be seeing lots of static artwork and very, very little else. That said, it is beautiful artwork, okay? Beautiful artwork with really stellar art direction. It stays cohesive. It never gets kind of too far out there. It feels grounded in its own reality. You have some really recognizable characters. The character designs are excellent, and the same goes for the environments. And this is important because you don't have anything else visually to carry the game. It's not like, man, you know, the environments were bland, but the combat was good. No, this is the only thing that you get to look at for the entire game, which means that it has to be good. Now, if you don't like the art style, then I can't do anything for you because this is just what it's going to look like the entire time, okay? Now, there is one other factor when it comes to the presentation of the game, and that is what you hear. And the music is pretty darn good, but the voice acting is also very, very solid, okay? The music's pretty excellent. It's got this modern cyberpunk feel to it, which, I mean, kind of fits the whole theme of what we got going on here. People got chips in their brain and stuff like that, but the music always complements the scene really, really well, and it complements what you are doing and how you are interacting with people, because you're going to be interacting with a whole host of different characters in different environments from different backgrounds, and the music seamlessly integrates into that and also responds to how you are navigating through these characters' plot threads, essentially. Voice acting is great. 99% of the game is voice acted. It's not 100%, but that 1% is the narrative, okay? Because even you as the AI, your responses, you will hear a voice acted response of what you said, okay? The only thing that isn't is when you arrive on a scene and it's like cars rush past, and that's when you see Talongray walk off of the sidewalk into the garden. That part is not voice acted. Absolutely everything else is, which is great because it means that you can get more attached to the characters because you're not just reading them, you're actually getting to interface with them on what feels a more personal level, because all of them are directly interfacing with you because that's your purpose as an artificial intelligence. To interface with these characters and guide them through whatever task it is that they have assigned to you. The characters I found all to be pretty stellar. It's going to really depend on how you, as an individual in our world, perceive things on how you feel about each of these individuals, though. Now, how does it play? it's a visual novel, okay? It's a choose your own adventure storybook, all right? People talk, you are given a choice of dialogue options, you make a dialogue option, and then people talk some more, okay? Now, in this game, there is only ever 2 options. You are only given an A or a B, which it does limit your ability to respond to some things, but this is also actually pretty fantastic because it makes the game progress really quickly. You are only given 2 options, and outside of some of the more strenuous moments in the story, you shouldn't have to think about these very much because these options are going to be as such that you're just going to know what answer it is. A lot of them are like yes or no, go here or go here. And while some of them aren't very clear because you're either missing context or you would really love more information, that's not available. You're not going to get it. So you make a choice with what you have. So you can make these answers and responses super, super quick, which means that everything just keeps rolling at a really stellar pace. You don't have too many options that you have to think too far through. So you just keep going. Now, they did try to make an attempt at there being like weight in your choices. And that's where the city management part comes in, okay? There's 4 aspects of the city management. There's your capital, happiness, order, and power, okay? Capital is how much money do you have? And this is based off of where you are earning money and where you're spending money. But don't think that you're going to be looking at like individual job ledgers or anything like that. This is a very, very vague overview of like general capital because you'll be helping Rue with his local like small shop. Like he just sells like burgers out of a truck at the beginning of the game, and as you help him, the capital for the whole city goes up. And it's like, well, that's not really realistic. That's not how that works, but it's a very generalized sense. And you can choose how this works because you'll have people come to you and be like, hey, should we, as the company that made the artificial intelligence, be like, hey, should we invest in this research? Or this pharmaceutical company has come and asked us to, help fund their research into trying to find a cure for this ailment. And you can choose to do that and then you'll make your choice, and then you'll immediately see the results of that choice. So you'll see the money go up or down immediately after you answer. Now, the happiness meter is about the happiness of the public. So we talked about how much money the city has. Now we're going to talk about how happy the people are. And it's about like, are their needs met, or do they feel like they have a reasonable amount of freedom? And this one I actually found really, really easy to just keep maxed out because I just want people to be happy. And the choice of what would make people happy was really, really easy. And it kind of felt like the opposite of the next one, which is order. And it's kind of like a law versus chaos bar. And it's about the control, not that necessarily you have over the city, but that the city has over itself. So think things like police forces and organized crime and stuff like that. And I'll say mine, it tanked early in the game. Like it was flatlined below the bar. Because the questions at the beginning of the game that ask this are like, hey, there are protesters out there protesting this thing. And I'm super leftist, so I was like, yeah, fuck them, let them protest. They're rioting over here about this, social political issue. And I'm like, cool, let them fucking riot. And they're like, okay, well, do you want to set a curfews for this reason? I'm like, no, give people their freedom. So we just descended into chaos super fast. But we were able to max it out completely later because later on, 1, those protests had resulted in positive change within the city, and 2, later on we got to take down parts of crime that I don't agree with. We were able to expose a corrupt judge and end child labor and from this particular company and stop this money laundering scheme that this massive CEO had. And all of those contributed to increasing our law versus chaos, and it ended up that we maxed out at the end of the game anyway. And then that last category is power. And this is your personal power. How much power do you have as an artificial intelligence over the city? And because people will come to you and they will ask you hey, do you mind giving up some of your server space for the purpose of regulating the traffic lights or whatever? And it's yeah, sure, that's fine. But because you let go of that, you would lose power. But other stuff, they'd come to you and be like, hey, you're an artificial intelligence. Can you help monitor the city sewer system? Like, would you be all right with that? And it's like, yeah, sure. I'm an artificial intelligence. That sounds like I should absolutely do that because I'm able to, and I have nigh infinite resources and attention to be able to give wherever I want it to. And stuff like that would like spike the shit out of your power because they're like, oh man, the AI is controlling the sewer system now. And it's like, yeah, because you don't fucking want to, right? Like, that's what I'm here for. That said, all of these categories that we just talked about, I couldn't tell that this really mattered, okay? The only obvious repercussion for any of this was at the end of each of the game's chapters, you would get like a report, and the report would say everything that happened during the chapter, and then it would also give you like the city's responses from like newscasts and podcasts or whatever about how people felt about those things. And it was those 4 categories: capital, happiness, power, control, and power. But I don't feel like there was any consequences really for any of them. I still cared, but it felt like it was the lowest important thing on the bar compared to the characters' individual stories and the overall story, which is where this game as a visual novel has to shine the brightest. So, is the story good? There are 3 aspects to this story, okay? The individual stories. The stories of the individual characters, okay? These are things like helping a reporter with scoops. I've already mentioned helping a local businessman run his burger truck that eventually gets turned into a restaurant if you help him out. Things like helping a local politician who's trying to do the right thing. These are individual stories. Now, some of these stories do cross over one another, but largely they're individual. And then you have the city stories, which largely we covered talking about in all the city management stuff. And then there's the company story, which is kind of the overarching thread. You are an AI, and you were made by a company whose, I believe, name is Mindcore, but I could be completely wrong. That's just me operating off of memory. And you were made by a company for a purpose, and the purpose is to run the city, one, to improve lives, but also to make them money. And there's stuff happening at this company. There's a power struggle within this company, and also a debate about how to use you as an artificial intelligence. What should you do? How should you be utilized? What is the best use of your resources? And that is a continuous plot thread that leads all the way up until the end of the game. Now, the story is largely dependent on you and your empathy as a human being impersonating this artificial intelligence. The characters are just people, but that means that the question is, do you care about people, these people, real or not? And that's where a lot of your decision making is going to come in. And I did see in some of the Steam reviews some criticisms about the ending, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. But one last thing I want to say on this game, when it comes to the story and the gameplay, is that it did something that I had never seen before, okay? I've played a few visual novels, and there are some really excellent stories that are told in visual novels, okay? But that's normally all that you see from a visual novel, is that it is a story, okay? But when you think of like mind-blowing things that happen in a visual novel, it's normally like a twist that you didn't predict, a surprise, a character taking an action that you weren't expecting, right? This visual novel did something that I didn't think was achievable inside a visual novel, and that was made me feel pressured. And not pressured to make the right choice, but pressured because I felt like I was running out of time. And not because there was a clock ticking down somewhere, not because it was like, oh, you only have a certain number of days to max out all of your social links in Persona before the school year's over. There's a sequence in this game, and I don't want to spoil any of it beyond saying that it's in there, that I felt like we were trying our damnedest to go as fast as we could, to where I felt anxious that we weren't going fast enough, that we weren't going to make it. And that is a really difficult tone to convey through just text. There wasn't any visuals beyond static images of us trying to get somewhere in time. It was just talking and decision after decision after decision while we try to make it in time. And it was incredible. It is something that I will never forget about this game because it was so perfectly executed that I felt like I didn't have enough time because of circumstances that I wasn't able to control. And to convey that through A and B questions and just a few sentences at a time is so impressive. Especially because it wasn't a question of like, you know, biting your nails of are they going to make it? It is, are we going to make it? Are we going to be fast enough? Can we make it? And that is really, really cool. And I strongly recommend playing through the game if it fits your interests, just so that you can experience that, because there is a part of the core story that this is attached to, so you will experience it no matter what. But as we come to a close, I'm going to talk again about the Steam reviews. There was some really heavy criticisms in the Steam reviews because this game is tagged with like multiple endings, but they said that the endings weren't very different, and I don't know what that means because I only played through the game once, and I normally only play through games once, especially because games like this, I wouldn't change my choices. That's why I've never really played through like the Mass Effect trilogy again, because I wouldn't change my choices. It would just for me to revisit the characters, revisit the world, and revisit the experience again, but I don't need to choose the Renegade route every single time on my next playthrough because I don't want to. I made my choice and I'm sticking with it. And I feel the same way about NeuroNet Mendax Proxy, of that outside of maybe picking a couple of options to like help people sooner rather than later, I wouldn't change my choices that I made during this game. Otherwise, there were a few quality of life things that I think if they can add them would be great to have. The biggest of which is a log, because there's no way to pull up like a notepad of everything that was said before. So sometimes people will be like, hey, blah, 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 new text line, blah, 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 new quest line. So what do you think about that? And then he provided with A and B conversation, A and B choices. And I'm like, shit, what the fuck did they say? And I can't ask them like, hey, can you repeat that? I can't pull up a log to see what they said. So I'm like, I don't know, A. Like, it was like, I struggled with that one. And that's the only thing that I would immediately like to see. Otherwise, some of the characters were a little bit flat, but that's more about how much interest you have in the individual characters. But it felt like some of these characters were so normal that they were not memorable. But I guess that's kind of fitting, because boring people would use the artificial intelligence as well. You know, you were meant to serve everyone. So even if you're helping someone who's just kind of bland, that would be an accurate representation of the game. But either way, ultimately it was a good experience and I enjoyed it. Our playthrough took about 7 hours, which is pretty good for a visual novel, but just keep that in mind if you're looking at going into it. There's plenty of room for a sequel, but I'm not going to share any details for that because it is like super mega spoilery, okay? In my previous reviews, I have been giving things a score out of 10. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to be giving things a score out of 5 because I feel like that is a better limitation to make sure that I am giving an accurate representation of how I feel about the game. So for NeuroNet Mendax Proxy, if you would like a number, it gets 4 out of 5. That said, that's a big asterisk on there because visual novels aren't for everyone, okay? You're not going to have some sort of cool combat or anything like that. You need to be interested in the story, and the story needs to be what carries you through, and it might not do that for you. But I feel that this stands out because it isn't a very standard-looking anime game, which I feel is what a lot of visual novels end up being. They just look like manga, they look like anime, and that can push a lot of people away. This has a different art style and also a different like an idea behind it, a different setting, a different theme, a different narrative than just another anime looking visual novel. If you don't mind those, give it a try, okay? Also, it's priced at $20, and in some ways with visual novels, people are like, I wouldn't pay more than $5 for that, and I get it, okay? But there's a lot of quality to show off here, and I definitely recommend it if you're feeling its vibe, especially because it does have a very beautiful art style. It is fully voice acted, great music, and I really enjoyed the story a lot. So $20, give it a try. But let me know what your thoughts are. How are you feeling after watching this review? And one, thank you for watching it. Do you think you might give it a try, or are you just gonna be like, nah, sorry, visual novels still aren't for me, no matter how much you talk them up? I completely get it. We've got a couple of reviews coming up, those being Honkai Star Rail. I finally played enough of it that I think I can finally review it, as well as Eden Gate, The Edge of Life. We'll be putting out a review for that as well. But let me know what your thoughts are. If you want to keep up this conversation elsewhere, two great places to do so are Discord and Twitter. I'm very active on both. We also stream very consistently on Twitch, so please go check out the live stream. But that said, if you do go watch one of the other videos on the channel, or if I see you in the live stream, thank you and enjoy.